We have at our disposal a tremendous number of alternative energies
and infrastructure possibilities,
and sophisticated manners of implementation
which could reduce our reliance on fossil fuels dramatically, paving the way to a world that would have zero reliance on hydrocarbon energies at all. Unfortunately, you are not going to see this anytime soon, for the economic paradigm we live in sets up another serious problem that we need to address, and I simply call this establishment paralysis. Given our tremendous reliance on hydrocarbon energy at this stage of human evolution, people, when hearing about the obvious problem of depletion, naively brush it off under the assumption that the establishment is actually preparing for a transition out of our dependency on hydrocarbons. Or better yet, that the establishment can actually afford to create a transition. In order to understand the difficulty of moving out of our current established energy paradigm, we must first realize that from a financial standpoint, there is very little motivation to move into a new system. This is the very nature of an established institution in the monetary system. The fact of the matter is, an exorbitant amount of money, I know this will sound strange to many of you, an exorbitant amount of money is going to be made on the scarcity of energy and, in fact, the collapse of society itself. Our economic system is predicated on making money on the way up and making money on the way down. Those in power, referencing back to that Citigroup document I talked about, have a propensity to care more about the short-term, short-sighted financial benefits of running out of energy than they care about the pivotal life-supporting attributes that it provides. If you look back at history, you see that the concern over depleting fossil fuels has been talked about for a long time. And many scientists in the 1960s and 70s felt that by the year 2000 we would have an entirely different energy infrastructure. Why didn't that happen? Why is it that the Reagan administration ripped off the solar panels from the White House that Jimmy Carter had installed? Why is it the U.S. government sided with big oil so the electric car would be squashed in the United States? The answer, of course, is that our profit-based system sets up a natural defensive propensity to stop anything if those changes find the prior establishment to be obsolete. This is likely the most caustic attribute of our current situation, the knee-jerk propensity to stop productive change for the sake of preserving market share and profit for select groups. Think about it. If you start a company, you hire employees, you generate income. What have you done? You've created an institution which yourself and your coworkers rely on for their income and hence survival. Therefore, you will do what you need to protect yourself and your life-sustaining company. It is providing for your standard of living. In other words, there is a built-in short-sightedness. And this survival element, which is only operational in our current profit-oriented system, is what is stopping needed change from coming to pass. I could probably ramble off many examples of new advents that have been pushed to the side because they're either too efficient or too sustainable for the market system to absorb, or simply money can't be made continually off of them. It can't perpetuate the system, or it puts an industry out of work. It puts people out of work. There is a human element to this. So there's a natural need, a natural attribute, where people say, well, okay, this is probably better for society, but I need to make money now. I can't think about the transition, so let's just push this aside for now. That's what's happening over and over and over and over again. It's not that they're bad people or anything like that. This is what the system has created. Simultaneously, let's remember that the market system requires constant problems. In order for the public interest in consumption to be maintained, problems and cultural influence is required. The more problems there are, the better the economy, generally speaking. In this system, it is inherently good for cars to break down. It is good for people to get cancer. It is good for computers to become quickly obsolete. Why? More money. To put it into a sentence, change, abundance, sustainability, and efficiency
are the enemies of the profit structure. Progressive advancements
in science and technology, which can resolve problems of inefficiency and scarcity once and for all,
are, in effect, making the prior establishment's servicing of those problems obsolete.
Therefore, in a monetary system, corporations are not just in competition with other corporations. They are actually in competition with progress itself. Thank you. And again, this is why it's so difficult to have any form of change in a monetary system. You simply cannot have a social convention where money is made off of inefficiency and scarcity and misery and expect a quick incorporation of new advents that can relieve these problems. Okay, with that understood, let's get back to the energy problem. The final issue I'd like to point out is this. Apart from the fact that there's a great deal of money to be made by the select few as the majority suffers, apart from the fact that the established energy institutions have little motivation to forego their profitability to alter society's energy mediums, is the very harsh reality that due to the outstanding debts globally right now, I think as we all know, the Earth is essentially bankrupt, as hilarious as that is. There is likely not going to be enough money to change anything. And I want everyone to think about this very critically. As exciting as the potentials are for renewable energy in the fields of solar, geothermal, tidal wave, and the like, potentials that have been documented thoroughly that will far exceed the global energy consumption by thousands of percent. We still have the serious problem in our current structure of financing the infrastructure to make this transition. How do we transition into a new infrastructure where every single government on this planet, every country owes money to someone else, where they're seen as systemic breakdown of bankruptcy starting to occur in Europe, and the United States is just a matter of time? Given the current state of affairs and the urgency of renovation, especially with peak oil, how can we possibly afford to make a transition to these renewable energies before the scarcity of oil begins to shut down due to excessive oil prices because of supply and demand? One study by a leading expert in Sweden predicts by 2030,
The world will be using 10 barrels of oil for every new barrel discovered or extracted.
that's really not that far away. So, how can we expect the United States, with over $12 trillion worth of debt, barely able to cover its interest payments to other governments, with state bankruptcies occurring, near depression-level unemployment, cutting social programs, we're already selling off infrastructure to foreign countries, how can we expect to afford to move into a new infrastructure? I'm using energy as just a singular example. There's many other problems that we have to deal with. In 2008, the executive director of the International Energy Agency stated that it would take $22 trillion in investment to update the global energy supply infrastructure by 2030. $22 trillion. Where is that money going to come from? Do you really think that we're going to get away with just randomly printing more and more money in the central banks and expect no inflationary repercussions or debt collapse repercussions? Remember, all money comes into existence from loans. There has to be an initiator. Every single dollar in all of your wallets is owed to somebody by somebody. And this, again, leads us into the heart of the disease. The economic, monetary-based system, or the game, as I like to call it, because that's all it is. That's all it ever was, a game. And we can change the game anytime we want. We just need to convince those who are winning the game to put down their pieces for a moment and ask themselves if the game they are playing is really going to reward them in the long run. In a report coming out of the AFP, there's growing evidence that the current rate of our resource exploitation indeed has a time frame. The report states, quote, "As it is, humanity each year uses resources equivalent to nearly 1.5 Earths to meet its needs." Said the Global Footprint Network, an international think tank, we are demanding nature's services, using resources and creating CO2 emissions at a rate 44% faster than what nature can regenerate and reabsorb. This means that it takes the Earth just under 18 months to produce the ecological services humanity needs in 1 year. And if humankind continues to use natural resources and produce waste at its current rates, we will require the resources of 2 planets to meet our needs by the early 2030s. A gluttonous level of ecological spending, in their terminology, that may cause major ecosystem collapse, the report said. Now, by the way, I want to point out that people hear that and they have a Malthusian notion. They think that our consumption patterns are somehow inherent and they're not going to change. I read a statistic recently, and for my new film, I'm going to do a huge section on waste attributes of certain industries. And what I've come to find is that of all the production that's done, on average, 75% is waste. 75% is waste. Of all the materials that are created and put into circulation and taken out, 90% of those end up in landfills, I believe, within 6 months. This isn't about some natural human thing that we're doing. This is about the social system's obsession with constantly consuming for the sake of economic growth. In an analysis done by the IRRC, by 2025, it's predicted that 2/3 of the world will experience water scarcity. 2/3 of the world by 2025. Many seemingly wealthy countries are already turning to desalination processes. In turn, over 1 billion people are starving on this planet. Do you, with everything that we have discussed, think that any of these things are going to get better given our current financial crisis?